The first time the cops showed up, I was knee-deep in a trench, digging out the old irrigation pipe that had burst behind my shed. Officers said someone reported illegal land modifications. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. My name's Mason Deller. I'm a carpenter by trade, moved out to a quiet corner lot just outside the city last spring. About half an acre, fenced, with a detached workshop that was a dream come true. I signed the HOA papers like everyone else figured. It was just about keeping lawns mowed and not painting your house neon green. I had no idea what I was signing up for. The HOA president was a woman named Cheryl Ellings. Mid-50s, platinum bob haircut, and the personality of a lawnmower chewing gravel. The kind of woman who treats her clipboard like a badge of honor. I'd only spoken to her once before the cop visits started. She stopped by to scold me for stacking lumber too close to the property line. I'd measured it twice. She didn't care. After the first visit, I figured someone was bored, but then it happened again and again. Over 3 weeks, cops were sent to my property 4 times, each time new complaint. Unpermitted structure, hazardous waste, noise disturbance. I asked the officers who was filing the complaints. One shrugged and said, "Anonymous tip." But I wasn't stupid. I installed cameras. Every angle of my yard, driveway, and workshop. I set the system to alert my phone anytime someone stepped foot past the gate. Then the real kicker happened. It was a Tuesday. I was at work, fitting custom cabinets at a client's house when my phone buzzed, motion detected in the backyard. I pulled up the feed and nearly dropped my phone. Cheryl, inside my fence with a measuring tape. Snooping around my shed like she owned the place. I raced home, but by the time I got there, she was gone. I checked the footage. She'd climbed over the side gate using a milk crate. She walked around with a notepad, took photos of my tools and my workbench, then left. That night, I filed a police report for trespassing. I also made 10 copies of the footage, one for my lawyer, one for the HOA board, and one for the local news just in case. The next morning, another cop at my door. Cheryl had filed a complaint that I was illegally storing construction materials and running a commercial business from my property. The officer looked tired. I invited him in, offered coffee, and showed him the footage. He watched it, jaw tightening. "You want to press charges?" he asked. I nodded. "Absolutely." He left with a copy of the footage and promised to escalate it. Later that day, I attended the monthly HOA meeting. Cheryl sat at the front like a queen on a plastic throne, flanked by her loyal minions. I walked in with a laptop, connected it to the projector without asking, and hit play. The room went dead silent. There she was in full color, climbing my gate, snooping, trespassing. Someone gasped. A board member leaned forward, whispering something into another's ear. Cheryl stood up, face red, voice shaking. "This is taken out of context. You were trespassing," I interrupted, "and filing false police reports, over and over." She stormed out, but the damage was done, and that was just the beginning. "This is a board matter," Cheryl said, voice tight, as she walked back into the meeting room 20 minutes later. Her eyes darted toward the projector, which I had since turned off. "Any personal accusations can be addressed privately." "You climbed my gate," I said. "That's not a board matter." "That's criminal trespassing." The rest of the board shifted in their seats. A man in a forest green polo, name tag reading Edwin Vice President, cleared his throat. "Let's not escalate things unnecessarily," he said. "We can review the footage in executive session and—" "No," I said. "You don't get to hide behind closed doors after you've harassed me with bogus complaints and sent law enforcement to my home 4 times. I've already filed a report. The footage is with the sheriff's office." That shut Edwin up. Cheryl sat down, suddenly very interested in the papers in front of her. After the meeting, 3 homeowners approached me in the parking lot. One of them, a wiry woman named Patris, spoke first. "She did the same thing to me last year," she said. "Said my fence was off by 6 inches. Threatened me with fines if I didn't tear it down." The others nodded. One, an older guy in a faded ball cap, added, She made me pay for a tree removal that wasn't even on my property. Said it violated the sightline policy. I checked. No such policy exists. That night, I started digging. Not with a shovel this time, but with a laptop and a thermos of coffee. County records, meeting minutes, HOA bylaws, I tore through them all. What I found wasn't just irritating. It was illegal. First, Cheryl had been reimbursing herself for administrative expenses without board approval. Thousands of dollars over the last 2 years. Copies of receipts showed purchases of patio furniture, spa treatments, even a weekend stay at her resort 3 counties over. Second, the HOA's enforcement committee didn't actually exist. It was just Cheryl and Edwin, issuing fines and threats without due process. That violated both state HOA statutes and the association's own charter. Third, and this one blew the lid off, Cheryl had filed a lien on a homeowner's property for unpaid dues that had already been paid. I found the payment record in the ledger. The owner, a disabled veteran named Lewis who'd moved into the neighborhood with his daughter after his wife passed. He'd been too overwhelmed to fight it and paid the fine again. I printed everything, organized it into folders. One went to the sheriff's office, another to the county clerk. The biggest one I delivered to a homeowner meeting I called myself. I used a little known clause in the bylaws that allowed any resident to call a special session if they gathered signatures from 20% of the neighborhood. I got 35% in 2 days, thanks to the footage and the growing list of people Cheryl had harassed. The meeting was held in the community center gym. Over 80 residents showed up. I brought a projector again. This time, it wasn't just one video. I played footage of Cheryl stepping over fences, one from my yard, another from Patricia's. I showed scanned receipts of her administrative reimbursements. And then I put up the scanned copy of Lewis's check dated, signed, and marked paid in full alongside the lien document Cheryl had filed after it cleared. Lewis was in the front row. His hands trembled when he saw it. Edwin stood up, red-faced. "This doesn't mean anything. We all approved those reimbursements." A woman from the back yelled, "Then why aren't there any votes in the minutes?" He didn't answer. Cheryl sat frozen. She hadn't said a word since entering the room. When I finished, I pulled out the last document. A formal petition to remove her and Edwin from the board, signed by over half the residents. People clapped. Lewis stood slowly and said, "It's about time." 2 days later, the sheriff's department issued a warrant for Cheryl on charges of trespassing, fraud, and filing false legal documents. She was arrested at her home while trying to haul boxes of files out to her car. Turns out she'd tried to shred a bunch of HOA records the night before. Someone saw her and called it in. Deputies recovered 3 trash bags full of partially destroyed paperwork. Edwin lawyered up immediately, claimed he was just following Cheryl's lead. The DA didn't buy it. I was asked to testify, so were Patrice and Lewis. Cheryl's trial hasn't started yet, her lawyers trying to argue she was acting in an official capacity. But the county prosecutor seems confident. She's facing multiple felonies now, and with the footage and the paper trail, her chances look grim. In the meantime, the HOA board has been completely restructured. A special election was held. I didn't run for anything, but I helped vet candidates and make sure everyone understood the bylaws they were supposed to uphold. The new president is a retired school principal named Marcia. First thing she did was repeal every fine issued in the last 2 years and refund over $15,000 in administrative reimbursements. The second thing she did was install a new policy. Any board member caught entering a homeowner's property without written permission would be permanently barred from holding office. I still keep the cameras up, not because I expect trouble anymore, but because they remind me how fast things can spiral when power goes unchecked, and how fast it can be taken back when people stand up. The morning after Cheryl's arrest, I was back in my workshop, finally able to cut lumber without wondering if a patrol car would roll up my driveway. The whole place felt lighter, like the air had changed, but peace didn't last long. Around noon, I got a call from Deputy Langston, the one who took my original trespassing report. His voice was clipped, urgent. "We need you to come down to the station," he said. "Bring that backup drive with the HOA footage, the one you gave us copies from." I asked if something was wrong. "There's more," he said. "A lot more." I drove over, half expecting some clerical mix-up. When I walked into the conference room, Langston wasn't alone. A detective I hadn't met before stood near a table covered in manila folders, a laptop, and what looked like a few torn pieces of paper sealed in evidence bags. The detective introduced herself as Alvarez, from the county's Financial Crimes Division. "What you uncovered barely scratched the surface," she said, flipping open a folder. "We've been building a case for months. Your footage gave us what we needed to move." I sat down, trying to process it. She continued, "We raided Cheryl's home last night after the arrest. Found a second set of HOA books, hidden in a filing cabinet behind false paneling, totally off the record." Langston handed me a photo, dozens of receipts, some dating back 3 years, all labeled community improvement costs. But that wasn't what stopped me cold. It was the property addresses listed beside them. None of them were in our neighborhood. Alvarez leaned forward. She was funneling HOA money into a property flipping side business, using fake vendor names to bill the HOA for repairs, then laundering the funds into her LLC. I stared at the page. "You're telling me she used our dues to renovate houses she owned, 6 properties across 2 counties, Alvarez said, "all purchased under shell entities. She'd use HOA funds for materials, labor, then flip them for profit." I asked how Edwin played into it. "He signed off on everything," she said. "Claimed he thought the purchases were for community projects, but we found wire transfers from Cheryl's LLC to his personal account. Nearly $40,000 over 2 years. Langston added, "We've got enough to charge both of them with wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." I asked what they needed from me. "Your system recorded the timestamps of each incident," Alvarez said. "Every time Cheryl was on your property, she was also on the phone. We pulled her call records. She was coordinating with contractors on one of her flips during those visits. Your footage may tie her to misusing HOA time and resources for personal gain." I handed over the backup drive. As I left, Langston stopped me at the door. "By the way," he said, lowering his voice, "you might want to check your HOA's insurance policy. The fraud clause might entitle the neighborhood to restitution." That night, I called Marcia and the new board members. We scheduled an emergency meeting. It was standing room only. Marcia didn't waste time. "We've received confirmation from the county that our former president and vice president are under indictment. Charges include wire fraud, falsification of HOA records, and misappropriation of funds." Gasps rippled through the room. "They used our dues to renovate their own properties," Marcia said. "We're filing civil action to recover the losses." She turned to me. "Mason, you've been asked to speak." I walked up to the front. I didn't expect to get dragged into this when I moved here. I just wanted to fix up my place without being harassed. A few people nodded. "But this isn't about a shed or a measuring tape anymore. It's about trust and power, and what happens when no one watches the watchers." I paused. "We're not just victims of bad leadership. We were targeted, lied to, and used." After the meeting, a quiet man introduced himself as Jonah, a local real estate attorney who lived 2 streets over. He offered to help file the civil suit pro bono. "I've seen shady HOAs before," he said. "But this is criminal enterprise disguised as community management." Within a week, we filed suit on behalf of the neighborhood. The claim: restitution of over $200,000 in fraudulently used funds plus damages. That same week, something unexpected happened. A man in a dark suit showed up at my door, said he was with the state's Department of Community Oversight. "We monitor HOA compliance with state statutes," he explained. "Your case triggered a full audit." He handed me a preliminary report. It was damning. Cheryl had failed to file the HOA's annual financials for 3 straight years. The board hadn't held a valid election in over half a decade. Vendor contracts had been awarded without bids, and in some cases, to companies that didn't exist at all. "This neighborhood qualifies for state intervention," he said. "You're eligible for temporary receivership." I asked what that meant. "We appoint a neutral third party to oversee financial operations and rebuild governance from scratch." Marcia and the board agreed. Within days, a retired municipal auditor named Evelyn Hill was assigned as receiver. She was calm, methodical, and didn't tolerate excuses. First thing she did was freeze the HOA's accounts. Second thing, she halted all fee collections until the audit was complete. For the first time since I moved in, I saw neighbors smile on trash day. Evelyn held a town hall after 2 weeks. She laid out the full extent of the fraud. Cheryl's repairs had included installing a built-in wine fridge in one of her flips using HOA funds. Edwin had used HOA money to pay off credit card debt coded as landscaping consultation. "I'm recommending full dissolution of the current HOA charter," Evelyn said, followed by voluntary reassociation under new terms. No one objected. In the months that followed, we rewrote everything. No more secret fines. All records open to residents. Board members required to disclose any financial interests. We even built a shared community website where every budget item was posted monthly. Cheryl's trial began in early spring. I was called to testify along with Lewis, Patris, and several others. The prosecution presented the footage, financial records, and contractor testimony. Cheryl's attorney tried to argue she had been overwhelmed and lacked proper training. Didn't work. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 7 years in state prison, with restitution to be paid from the sale of her properties. Edwin took a plea deal, 18 months plus full repayment. 1 month after the verdict, Lewis came by with his daughter. They brought me a custom wooden sign for my workshop. Burned into the grain were the words, "Built right," stood tall. I hung it above the door. That summer, the neighborhood threw its first block party in years. No permits required. No surprise fines. Just tables of food, kids on bikes, and music echoing down the street. A few people asked if I'd ever thought about running for the board. I told them no, but I'd be watching. Always. And this time, so would everyone else. The morning after Cheryl's sentencing, Marcia called me. Her voice was calm, but there was something urgent beneath it. "We've got another problem," she said. "Not with Cheryl, something else she left behind." I met her at the community center where Evelyn Hill, the court-appointed receiver, was waiting with a box of files. She looked up from a stack of documents and gestured for me to sit. "I need your help reviewing something we found during a secondary audit," she said. "It's about the undeclared funds." I glanced at the folder she handed me. Inside were scanned checks, wire transfers, and a ledger that didn't match anything we'd seen before. The amounts were small, 200 here, 500 there, but there were dozens of them, all marked under the same heading. Parcel maintenance escrow. "That wasn't in any of the public budgets," I said. "It wasn't supposed to be," Evelyn replied. Cheryl created a fake escrow fund, separate from the HOA's official accounts. She claimed it was for long-term land improvements, but the account wasn't registered under the HOA, it was in her sister's name. Marcia leaned forward. "Her sister doesn't even live in the state." Evelyn nodded. "She lives in Arizona. We've confirmed that Cheryl funneled over $26,000 into this account over the last 4 years, completely off the books." I asked where the money came from. "Mostly from new homeowners," Evelyn said. She added a clause to the welcome package that charged a land stabilization fee. It wasn't filed with the county. She collected it personally during home sales. I exhaled slowly. So she was running a side scheme even on new residents. "We've already contacted the district attorney's office," Evelyn said, "but there's more. One of the payments came from a property that was never part of this HOA. Marcia pulled out a plot map and pointed to a thin strip of land behind the eastern fence line. This parcel, it's county-owned. Cheryl claimed the HOA acquired it 5 years ago and used that to charge buyers for its upkeep. I stared at the map. But we never bought that land. Correct, Evelyn said. She forged the transfer documents. That was enough to get the county involved again. A land fraud investigator named Terrence Grady reviewed the forged deed and confirmed that the county had never transferred ownership. Cheryl had copied an old transfer template, faked a notary stamp, and filed it herself. She'd used it to justify charging at least 9 homeowners for borderland maintenance on property that wasn't legally hers or the HOA's. Terrence filed a formal complaint with the state attorney general's office. That turned into a felony fraud investigation. The AG's office launched a second case. Cheryl, already in jail, now faced additional charges, this time for falsifying government documents, fraudulent land filings, and unlawful collection of fees under a false pretense. It wasn't over yet. A week later, Marcia received a certified letter from a law firm representing a family named the Kesslers. They lived 2 neighborhoods over, outside our HOA jurisdiction. According to the letter, Cheryl had sent them a cease and desist 2 years prior, demanding they stop using a shared driveway easement that bordered our neighborhood. She'd claimed the HOA had exclusive rights to it, a blatant lie. The Kesslers had paid her a settlement of $3,000 to avoid legal trouble. They'd just learned the truth after reading about the trial in the newspaper. She represented the HOA in a legal matter she had no authority over, Marcia said, holding the letter with trembling fingers. That's unauthorized legal action and extortion. We turned the letter over to the AG's office. The Kesslers provided a copy of the original agreement Cheryl had made them sign. It was on HOA letterhead, but the language was clumsy, and the signature line had only her name, no witness, no board member, no legal counsel. That document became exhibit in the third case. The news broke statewide. Local media picked it up first, then regional stations. HOA president faces third criminal case over forged land deeds, illegal settlements. The footage I'd captured made the rounds again, this time with a more serious tone. The public wanted more than restitution, they wanted accountability. Evelyn held a final audit hearing at the end of the month. She invited every homeowner, former board member, and affected party to attend. The gym echoed with quiet conversation as people filed in. Louis sat near the front with his daughter. Patris stood in the back, arms crossed. Even Jonah, the real estate attorney who'd helped us sue, showed up with a binder full of documents. Evelyn stepped up to the podium with a final report in hand. The total damages Cheryl Ellings caused directly and indirectly exceed $284,000, she said. This includes embezzled funds, fraudulent fees, unauthorized settlements, and the cost of legal representation for affected residents. She paused. But thanks to your cooperation and the evidence gathered by residents like Mr. Deller, we've recovered over 90% of the stolen funds through asset seizure. There was a murmur of surprised relief. Evelyn continued. We've also partnered with the county to create a public HOA oversight tool where residents across the state can report suspicious activity directly to regulators. Your neighborhood will serve as the pilot program. Applause broke out. After the hearing, I stepped outside for air. Louis joined me, leaning against the bench by the flagpole. You know, he said, I almost moved out last year, figured no one cared what was happening. I was wrong. I looked at him. You stayed, that counts for something. He nodded, then pointed across the street. A new family was unloading a moving van, kids bouncing around the driveway. They don't know yet, he said, how close this place came to falling apart. I watched the kids chase each other with foam swords, yelling joyfully. Maybe they won't have to, I said. Later that week, Evelyn announced her departure. The court had officially dissolved the old HOA charter, and the new one took effect under volunteer leadership and independent review. Marcia stayed on as president, but this time with term limits and public voting. Every position required financial disclosures. No more private reimbursements, no more secret committees. A neighbor named Tasha, a former IRS auditor, was elected treasurer. She implemented a transparent bookkeeping system that posted monthly statements online, accessible to every resident with a password. The first rule they passed under the new charter: no board member could act unilaterally on any matter involving homeowner property, finances, or external entities. Everything required a quorum and documented vote. A few weeks after the new structure settled, I was back in my driveway replacing a railing on the porch when a teenager from the new family came by with a box of cookies. "My mom says thanks," he said. "She heard you helped fix the neighborhood," I smiled. "Tell her to thank everyone, we all helped fix it." He ran off and I turned back to the railing. The wood was solid now, the kind that wouldn't warp or bend under pressure, the kind that held just like the place it was built in.